I want to start by saying that in North America, within my life frame, they started this college and university trend, for lack of a better word, where now just anyone, including the terrorists that they take into their sports leagues in North America, and their children and ancestors, and pretty much they're organized criminal ring. They send their useless players into these buildings, and then at some point they issue them paper that says they're either bachelors, masters, maybe an associate, or sometimes they call them doctorate. So now there's these useless figurines with all different backgrounds, agendas, and motives to interrupt and disrupt the Mount Rushmore Mastery Club and family, inner family workings. I'm sitting here where I've been blocked in New York somehow from entering where like master intelligence really exists by marriage or by introduction or whichever, just left in the field. Some now like intelligent design of the masters of the universe in some mastery, but certainly not like the North Americans claim it to be. And now there's this story on the television this morning where I'm like, are these the Weekend at Bernie's kids fighting with the criminals in the organized whatever in the Bishop's League that calls itself a master now? Like, I don't even want to look. Like, it's... Who's going to tell Dad? Like, not Dad, because that's the yes man, but who's going to tell the really scary guy with the one eyebrow that goes up and he's laughing because he really likes the kid, and then somebody else walks in the room and then he's got to, like, go back to, like, I don't smile. So, who's gonna let that guy know? Because that's really, like, it's his thing. To make sure the right thing goes on in the foreground. And I have a feeling there are people scared of that guy. Or that important whatever words. They've blocked me into this little... I don't even have words in a somebody special category to properly address the importance of that level of functioning human. So I don't, again, but here's what the idiots and idioms are saying. Whether it's the devil's hand or God's hand, not quite sure. Because again, they're just, it sounds like everybody's talking at once, and I'm sitting here going like, oh my God, oh God. So it's on See the BS this morning, up here. Now, the talk at the table is one brave soul and then the others.
In this hour, though, with a new flashpoint in the debate over how to handle immigration in this country.
Now, I mean, it says in the word... It's IMM, first of all. And then it has MI, Master Intelligence, and then it's got a capital G. It's a MIG. I mean, and then after it, it says ratio. I'm MIG, Master Intelligent G, and then ratio. And at the moment, the trajectory of North America looks like we are on a downtick for Masters of Intelligence that actually can convince and speak to what arrived in some break in the system. I mean, and then it feels like a showdown. Like, it's just like, oh my God, if the system goes down, how do you bring it back online? I mean, it says it right here, in a COVID. The VI, what happens? It needs a little propping up at this point. Because I'm like, now listen how they try to explain it to, is that a cooch or a couch potato? Because I know when Lynn watched it this morning, it just went in one ear, out the other, and it was just like, la-di-da, rest of the day. No concern. I'm like, is this thing on? Like, meaning my mom? Like, it's Walking Dead. It's what it feels like.
The efforts to end a pandemic-era policy, it's called Title 42. Now, the measure has been used to prevent around 1.7 million immigrants and asylum seekers from entering the United States on the claim that it's best for public health. The Biden administration now wants to end that policy.
Yes, the public health system, I'll speak for New York, especially in New York City, public health system has completely violated every biomedical ethical requirement and protocol issued by MI, for certain. They've got mixed facilities where they've got all different nations walking around with needles, paychecks, health studies, research, access to people's records. They've got phone systems that you can call in and out. It's not even like a lockdown facility where the employees are under some kind of special regulation. I mean, they then call some of them a teaching institution and put all sorts of mixed nations, like a United Nations blood bank. I mean, it's harboring disease within its own four walls, within its own design. Hello? Where do you go to report that level of, how can I be the only one that sees this? Seriously.
Policy, but some states are suing to keep it in place. Manuel Bojorquez is in Tijuana, Mexico, with what this means for families at the border.
So the health system in my area in New York is already infiltrated, infested with rotten multinationals from all over the globe, causing disease, causing sickness, causing all sorts of problems with politics, with money, with legislation, with laws, with calling themselves things, with education. They're propping up the arena of sports book with them just growing stronger, which makes it that much more dangerous. And now they're like, oh, well, that's the territory we're supposed to keep secured. If that's our 40-yard line between the Atlantic and the Pacific in North America being 48 puzzle pieces. And we got one guy, and at the moment that one guy looks like President Joe Biden, which has a on his record, but he supports other things. And then I got a backup to him and a former President Trump, who's got a stellar record as far as I'm concerned from what they put on this dipshits and lollipops machine. So that's how this middle piece at the moment looks from what they throw at me. If those are the two that I have as far as players on the field and keeping this stuff, I mean, there needs to be a rollback and a scale back. There's blood products, phlebotomy, there's hematology. I mean, there is a lot of fancy smoke and mirrors going on, putting light and writing laurels and laurelettes and giving opportunity where opportunity should have never even been fostered, harnessed, or developed. I'm in a New York bubble at the moment. I like Ryan Reynolds in that Free Guy movie. I mean, I'm just in my whatever and looking out at the world and looking at how everybody's translating the world. And I'm like, oh my God, where? I don't even know, because the people that put themselves in charge with the help of something in master intelligence, like, I don't even know. And when they mess up, they don't like to take responsibility. So, how's that gonna work in, like, ever getting out of this mess?
Manny, good morning to you. What are the people there telling you?
Good morning, Gail. Well, as you've seen, Ukrainian war refugees are allowed in, but asylum seekers from other countries, well, that's a different category, a different story. And they tell us the real crisis at the border is the one they've been living for months, stuck on this side, sometimes in dangerous situations and unable to apply for asylum at all.
Now, in my position in New York, I can't get a straight definition on asylum. When I look at Drew, like DREW, and not Drew Barrymore, because humans don't get cutesy, on a DRU, since I'm an ID on Druid, when it's written, just the symbols, standalone symbols by themselves, if they stood on themselves, could I tell a story about what and how it should be translated, considering that there are cultures elsewhere that already work upon this method, that their symbols actually sometimes are more than words that are just like the zombie language of what my area is going by at this point. When I write asylum without having a linear or delineated explanation in the way that the Japanese write, which is in a vertical horizon, I've heard, I don't know for sure, but that's the sound that they make and the label that they use around here, for a language that is vertically written. So for me, since they go left to right, the delineated state of vertices, if it's acronymed out into some other prose, PROSE, asylum at this point has not been explained and is not something I look at and automatically catch on as to what it could mean in the grander schematic of intelligent design and with inroads and whatever for an intelligent map of my own. It's one of those words at the moment that perhaps is kept at mastery level that I have no access to.
Huddled together at a migrant shelter near the U.S.-Mexico border. This family is on the run. 36 people
And it even says the word without "im" in front of it. It says my grant. So it's master intelligent area or whatever. It's like when time stands still at language lab. I was taught isolamia, I know that's important in like one instance. But my grant is M-I and then the word grant, G-R-A-N-T. Who's issuing the grants? Trump put in something called an Article 42. Now Biden wants to overturn it. That's a problem in bipartisan.
Total, 36 personas, total de una familia. They say they're being extorted by gangs back home in Michoacan, considered one of Mexico's most dangerous states, and played us a threatening voice message. You'll pay the consequences.
Sí.
Si no cooperan, if you don't cooperate. File for asylum in the U.S. due to Title 42. But Title 42 hasn't kept out all migrants. Refugees from war-torn Ukraine are entering the U.S. through the southern border.
Fuimos allá a la frontera y nos dijeron que no había asilo y que no nos podían ayudar.
So they said no asylum, no asilo,
No,
y no ayuda.
nada.
They couldn't help you.
Estaba cerrado.
That it was closed. Título 42 que dicen, no? Title 42.
Sí.
Some Democrats have joined Republicans in cautioning against what they consider a rushed end to the policy. Both Arizona senators, Democrats Kirsten Sinema and Mark Kelly, released a joint statement, Kelly calling it the wrong decision, and Sinema saying the move shows a lack of understanding about the crisis at our border. The White House says it anticipates a sharp rise in migrants and is sending additional resources to the border.
Title 42 is a public health directive. It's not an migration enforcement measure. And the decision on when to lift Title 42 was made by the CDC.
Have more calls come in?
Whoa, there's another. Thanks for pointing that one out. CDC. Now, is that the messy one with the what looks Egyptian lady? I mean, not ancient Egyptian, where the mummies in like the Plaza of Giza is, but like, I mean, it gets again really confusing with the CDC, right? Centers for Disease Control. Great. Well, the spokesperson that they keep putting up there is not Mount Rushmore, for sure. Now, while in like a United Nation kind of a way, her message is correct in the sense that it should not be lifted and having more problems we have to deal with pulling apart the public health system that currently exists within the 48 puzzle pieces because it's been completely infested and infected, and there are people walking around saying they're intelligent when I'm like, just because you speak doesn't mean it's intelligent. So, that's a problem, and I don't know what, I mean, it's just like, it's so messy. And then you've got the second set of the WHO, right, yeah, their representative on messy operations, at least the ones that were assigned to my New York area coming through on the televised airwaves. Who's got the, not who, but that's more of the WHO is more of a question in this area of I need a label on that, whatever they're going by in whatever, undocumented workers, that kind of WHO, not the CDC WHO. Because now they've confused that and it becomes a real, again, mental gymnastics, which it shouldn't have to be, especially at the most serious levels of everything.
Since the Biden administration said we're going to do away with Title 42?
The phone don't stop.
But even before the announcement was made, Pastor Albert Rivera, who runs the migrant shelter, was already building an expansion to eventually house 1,200 asylum seekers.
Some of them been waiting a year and a half for a permit just to come to the border here because they want to apply, do it legally. But the legal process to allow them to come all the way over here takes too long.
Still, Pastor Rivera says the biggest factors remain the violence and poverty afflicting parts of Latin America and driving people north. The end of Title 42 will not signal the end of another Trump-era policy, the Remain in Mexico policy, which a federal court ordered the Biden administration to continue. So that means that likely most asylum seekers will still have to remain in Mexico as their cases are being decided. Nate?
Manny and Tijuana, thank you. It's remarkable when we talk about families at the border and what to do with them. We should remind ourselves that for most people in America, they were once a family at the border. Their family was the one at the border. We should keep that in mind as we think about how to treat these newcomers.
Exactly right.
Well said, Tom.
The point is that you've had such a switch in ratio. Your system is so overweighted with problems. I mean, at what point does some intelligent something sit down and say, we're at capacity? We're over capacity. Those should be that should be like the scariest thing if you want to be able to stay upright and function physically in some form of human genetic. Is like the words, we're over capacity. And yet there's still people trying to force themselves on the field through all sorts of mechanisms and mannerisms. I mean, even TV producer land, they put on zombie makeup. They called it The Walking Dead. They made a TV show of there are only so many intelligent designed creatures that are still PEAKID with color, with peach and some other whatever. And how they try to find shelter with all the dead zombie virus things walking around trying to get in because all they want to do is eat them and make them into zombies. I mean, there is such a correlation with what's going on right now with that television artwork pantomime. I mean, and the fact that it was such a popular show. I can only, again, I'm not into gore and or I should say gory, because I think there's a guy that goes by Al Gore, but there's this, it's really frightening because it's so actually going on, but in a parallel paradigm shift, and losing the intelligently designed pieces that you need within the yes men that work in some form of a circus and keeping them online rather than being derailed and offlined by some zombie whatever growing at the gate trying to get in and to throw you offline. It is just, I don't know. It is frightening. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, Solar System, Milky Way, Universe, Galaxy is broken, and it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.